Hi everybody and good morning. Today we are going to cover the topic aerobic and anaerobic respiration. For the 2022 exam, this would be covering the learning objective of A to B to A to E, and for the 2023 exam, this will be covering the learning objective of 10.2 to 10.3. So firstly, let's look into the 2023 syllabus. So this is topic 10.2 to 10.3, and this is your learning objective. For the 2023 exam, your learning objective is firstly 10.2.1, describe aerobic respiration as the release of a relatively large amount of energy by the breakdown of glucose in the presence of oxygen. Next, your learning objective is 10.2.2, state the word equation and balanced chemical equation for aerobic respiration. 10.3.1, describe anaerobic respiration as the release of a relatively small amount of energy by the breakdown of glucose without using oxygen. 10.3.2, state the word equation for anaerobic respiration in humans. And 10.3.4, state the word equation for anaerobic respiration in yeast. All right, so topic 8, respiration for the 2022 exam. You have this learning objective. Firstly, it's 8B. Define aerobic respiration as the release of a relatively large amount of energy by the breakdown of food substances in the presence of oxygen. Next, you have 8C. State the equation in words or symbols for aerobic respiration. Next, it's 8E. Define anaerobic respiration as the release of a relatively small amount of energy by the breakdown of food substances in the absence of oxygen. 8F, state the equation in words or symbols for anaerobic respiration in humans and in yeast. So now that I finished telling you guys your learning objective that is connected to your O-level syllabus, we're going to cover our step to success now. Firstly, it's to define aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. Secondly, it's to state the word equation of those and also to state the chemical equation of those two. So you guys are going to share this step to success for today. All right, firstly, aerobic respiration. So when we think about aerobics, we always think about people exercising. However, aerobic respiration, what it actually refers to is, so this is the definition of aerobic respiration. Aerobic respiration is actually the release of relatively large amount of energy by the breakdown of glucose in the presence of oxygen. So we talked about respiration itself, and respiration is basically the release of energy by breaking down food substances, for example, glucose, and it happens in all living things. And this itself, this is a very specific definition, which is aerobic respiration. So aerobic respiration is a kind of respiration that releases a large amount of energy, and you break down glucose in the presence of oxygen. So aerobic respiration has this very specific characteristic where it's large amount of energy, using glucose and having oxygen and using up oxygen actually. For aerobic respiration, this takes place in the form of what we call oxidation of glucose. Oxidation is a chemical process. I hope that you've covered this in chemistry. I'm not going to explain it in this video. You can definitely go and text your chemistry teacher. Sorry, Miss Mano. Okay, this aerobic respiration takes place in the cytoplasm of living cells. And and the organelle that we're talking about specifically is the mitochondria. So aerobic respiration specifically happens mainly in the mitochondria. There are both enzymes that can be found in the cytoplasm and basically the membranes of the mitochondria. And if you remember, this is how we draw the mitochondria. It actually has two membranes. That's why we draw two lines here. One squiggly, one in the middle, and one like a very oval-ish shape on the outside. And the enzymes can actually be found at the membranes of the mitochondria. So when we talk about aerobic respiration, just for O levels, just try to memorize and just think about mitochondria, and you're good to go. Right, for aerobic respiration, what it actually does is that it unlocks the chemical energy that is found in the glucose molecule. So remember that we draw a glucose molecule as this hexagon shape. This is just a simplified drawing of the glucose molecule, and this is the structural formula of the glucose molecule. You can see over here that there are a lot of bonds here, and it's not just here, but also in between over here and over here. There are also bonds there. So the glucose molecule contains a lot of chemical energy that is stored between the bonds, and during aerobic respiration, we actually break those bonds and release energy from the glucose molecule. Energy is released for mainly metabolic activities, and we have covered this. For example, muscle contraction, protein synthesis, cell division, active transport, growth, passage of nerve impulses, and maintenance of body temperature. These are all mainly metabolic processes or activities. And there are actually two waste products that are released from aerobic respiration, which is carbon dioxide and water. What we mean by waste products, mainly in a chemical equation or chemical process, is the fact that these are things that you don't need from that process, and especially carbon dioxide is very toxic for your body because carbon dioxide can dissolve in the water part of your blood, which is your plasma, contains a lot of water, and it can form carbonic acid. So remember that acidic environment would change the pH of your blood and hence your tissues, and it would also disrupt the enzymes from working at its optimum pH. And water itself is also a waste product because you don't really, of course you do need water, but you drink water to pretty much get the best parts of water, the functions of water. That's how you get water in your body for the main functions and absorb it. But you don't really need the water as much. So it is a waste product when it comes to respiration, basically. So what happens to carbon dioxide and water, you guys might have guessed this, is the fact that you would actually breathe it out. So carbon dioxide and water is actually removed, these waste products, because they are waste, so let's not keep them. You gotta remove them from your body. So when you do that, you breathe out both carbon dioxide and water. So in your breath, it's actually much more concentrated with carbon dioxide and also moisture, water vapor, basically. Right, so how do you write down the word equation for aerobic respiration? So basically, your main character of today, glucose. And then you have, remember, in the presence of oxygen, so plus oxygen, you draw an arrow, then you write down carbon dioxide plus water, which is your waste product, plus energy. And when we talk about this, we mean high amounts of energy. So if you want to add high amounts of energy here, you can do that. And just so you know, when we draw the equation, the word equation, I would definitely prefer it if everything is in the straight line, but there ain't no space in this little screen for me to write everything in a straight line and having the fonts as big as I can get it to be. So please make sure that in an exam you can write it down in everything in a nice straight line. So again, glucose plus oxygen, arrow, carbon dioxide, water, and energy. Sometimes, and it's not that required of you, but you can add mitochondria at the top or of this arrow if you want to, kind of similarly to if you're drawing the chemical equation, the word equation for photosynthesis. You write down sunlight and chlorophyll at the bottom. So you can write down mitochondria over here because it does take place in the mitochondria, and we're referring to aerobic respiration. And the chemical equation, you know that glucose is C6H12O6, so plus O2 for oxygen. You draw an arrow, and it's CO2 for carbon dioxide, and you know water, the symbol is H2O, and energy doesn't have a symbol, so just write down energy. And again, I'm going to repeat, you can write down high amounts of energy if you want to, or just plain energy. However, remember, we need to always balance our chemical equation. So, can you take a guess where or how we're going to balance the equation? I'm going to give you 3 seconds to think. Okay, your time is up. Alright, so we draw a number 6 at the O2, 6 CO2, and oh my goodness, that's my alarm. Sorry guys. That's my alarm to wake up. It's actually 6:15 a.m. right now, and I'm recording the video because last night I was very, very sleepy. Anyway, going back to here, so you draw a 6 in front of the O2, 6 CO2 and 6 H2O, and now you have a fully balanced chemical equation for aerobic respiration. Right, aerobic respiration, remember, releases a lot of high amounts of energy, and this is needed for immediate energy requiring instances. For example, if you are in a war. Have you guys watched Lord of the Rings? Do you guys know who this man right here is? This is Legolas, and he's all energetic, and he gets that large amount of energy from aerobic respiration. At the start of the race, you do release a lot of energy for the race using aerobic respiration. And also if you are doing other aerobics exercises or even dancing. So at the start of the war races, and also at the start right before you start your dance routine, you're going to be using your glucose and oxygen and to release a lot of energy, because all of these occurrences really require a lot of energy so that your body can do what it wants to do. There's your fight or flight, there's your running right here, and also dancing. So all of these activities actually do require a high amount of energy, and you get initially high amounts of energy from aerobic respiration. Right, next up you have anaerobic. So anaerobic respiration. Anaerobic respiration means basically the anaerobic means it's without oxygen. So the definition of aerobic, if you can remember, it just means with oxygen, and anaerobic means without oxygen. And anaerobic respiration, so just now at the beginning of the war, you might be getting a high amount of energy, right, when you are at the beginning. And how about if that war is lasting for a long time? So if you have watched Violet Evergarden, this is Violet right here, and she's still fighting, and she's keeping up fighting for a very long time. And if you have watched Jujutsu Kaisen, and you would definitely know this scene right here. If you haven't watched Jujutsu Kaisen, this is basically one of the last parts of the scene between Todo and Yuji, and actually I forgot the name of this cursed spirit right here. Basically they have already used up a lot of the oxygen that they can breathe in. And so the similarities between these two is the fact that you need energy throughout a long period of time, and the fact that there is only enough oxygen that can get into your body. So, and you used up most of the oxygen for that energy for aerobic respiration, and you don't have enough anymore for aerobic respiration. So what is sustaining these two fight scenes is actually anaerobic respiration. So anaerobic respiration is also the release of energy, but it's the release of relatively small amounts of energy. It is by the breakdown of food substances in the absence of oxygen. So anaerobic respiration, you can try to think about it as like an emergency response. Basically, you want, and if you are in a war, if you're fighting a cursed spirit for a long time, you need the energy. It's an emergency and you need it quickly. So what you need to do is you need to release small amounts of energy really, really quickly in the absence of oxygen, because you can only get so much oxygen to get into your body at one point in time. So to get quick release of energy, you can carry out anaerobic respiration. However, you need to realize that it's only a small amount of energy. So in humans, anaerobic respiration takes place in mainly the cytoplasm of cells. Remember, we talked about aerobic respiration, and that occurs in the mitochondria. So for anaerobic, this occurs in the cytoplasm. So if you guys remember, your circle, and that is your cell membrane. And right here, the space within the circle is your cytoplasm. And you draw another circle inside, and that refers to your nucleus. And in the cytoplasm right here, that is where the enzymes for anaerobic respiration can be found. So we say that anaerobic respiration takes place in the cytoplasm of cells. Sorry, just ignore that. I'm talking about anaerobic here. Cancel that. So anaerobic respiration. The waste products released from anaerobic respiration is, for humans, lactic acid, and this is the formula for lactic acid. So here we have the word lactic acid, and in the future video we're going to actually talk about the accumulation of lactic acid and what it actually does to our body. So if you guys can try to imagine you are those two, you are Violet and you are Yuji, and you are fighting for such a long time, and that is equivalent to doing an hour plus of exercise, and then after that you get really painful feelings on your muscles, so you get all these cramps and all that feeling. That is actually due to lactic acid that has built up at those muscles, because you were doing a lot of physical exercises, a lot of muscle contraction, and that is where most of the anaerobic respiration is localized. So you're going to produce a lot of lactic acid at your muscles, and that's why it really hurts your body a lot after you do exercise. So let's get into the word equation for anaerobic respiration now. So remember, no oxygen, so just write down glucose, then an arrow straight away, and then you have lactic acid plus some energy. Remember that anaerobic respiration doesn't release a large amount of energy, so please make sure to specify that in here. So for the chemical equation for anaerobic respiration in humans, that's C6H12O6 for glucose. You draw an arrow, and C3H6O3 for lactic acid. And of course, energy, we don't really have a symbol for that. If you want to be very, very specific, you can write down ATP. ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate. That is your energy, but O level, so we're just going to refer to energy here. And of course, you need to also balance your equation, so 2 molecules of lactic acid. Right. Anaerobic respiration is also not just occurring in humans, it also occurs in these microorganisms that is playing a large part in these two processes right here. So if you guys realize, if you have ever made bread before, or if you've seen somebody make bread before, the bread dough does rise. And this is mainly because you add yeast to your dough, and then eventually the yeast, because the dough itself, you can see that it's kind of like, imagine the dough kind of like a covering. So if you're in a bread dough, you're gonna be suffocating, right? Because there ain't much space there. And yeast cells are very tiny, but obviously there's not a lot of oxygen that is available inside the dough. And usually you also cover this as well. And so the yeast actually respires, because they are living organisms. So when they respire anaerobically, this is what mainly happens here. So during anaerobic respiration in yeast, why the dough rises is because, so let's cover the definition first. It is the process by which yeast cells break down glucose during a specific process called fermentation, and this produces ethanol, aka alcohol. So if you are asked to define anaerobic respiration in yeast, please use this definition. It is the process by which yeast cells break down glucose during fermentation to produce ethanol, aka alcohol. Yeast cells, they're very, very tiny. This is a GIF showing you guys yeast cells right here. And firstly, anaerobic respiration, there is relatively less energy released than in aerobic respiration, since alcohol molecules is relatively large and contains a considerable amount of chemical energy. So this is right here is your ethanol molecule and the structural formula of it, and you can see there is still quite a lot of bonds here as compared to let's say in aerobic respiration you just release water and carbon dioxide and energy, and both carbon dioxide and water are very, very small molecules. But ethanol itself is a relatively large molecule, so in between these bonds there is still a large amount of chemical energy. And this is why the bread is actually rising. It's because of the waste products released from anaerobic respiration in yeast, which is ethanol and carbon dioxide. So remember that for humans, we only release lactic acid plus energy. We don't release carbon dioxide, but yeast, because they make ethanol, they also release carbon dioxide as a waste product during aerobic respiration. And this is the main reason why the dough rises. We don't taste any ethanol in our bread because when we are baking the bread, we are putting it in very high temperatures. So ethanol is alcohol and has a very low boiling point. So basically the ethanol that is found in that dough would actually evaporate when you are baking the bread. So let's cover the word equation now for anaerobic respiration. Anaerobic respiration, you have glucose, and then you have an arrow, then you say ethanol plus carbon dioxide plus, again, talk about some energy released only because you have a relatively small amount of energy that is released during anaerobic respiration. Chemical equation for that, C6H12O6 for glucose. Draw an arrow, C2H5OH plus CO2 plus some energy. And we have to balance this equation as well. So draw a 2 and draw a 2 in front of ethanol and carbon dioxide. All right, now we're done. So let's look at our step to success. We only have 3 for today. Your first step to success is to define aerobic respiration. Aerobic respiration is the release. Remember, we don't use the word produce, we use the word release of relatively large amount of energy by the breakdown of glucose, and this time it's in the presence of oxygen, aka using oxygen. Now let's define anaerobic respiration. This is in humans. Anaerobic respiration is the release of relatively small amount of energy by the breakdown of food substances in the absence of oxygen. All right, next we have the definition of anaerobic respiration in yeast, which is the process by which yeast cells break down glucose during the fermentation process to produce ethanol, aka alcohol. Say the word equation for aerobic respiration, which is glucose plus oxygen. You draw an arrow, carbon dioxide plus water plus energy. Remember, if you're writing this in an exam, it'll be better if you write it down in a straight line if you can. Next, you have to state the word equation for anaerobic in humans. Anaerobic respiration in humans, which is glucose, arrow, lactic acid plus some energy. Anaerobic respiration in yeast, the word equation is glucose, arrow, ethanol plus carbon dioxide plus some energy. Next, you also need to know the chemical equation. So let's cover aerobic respiration first, which is C6H12O6 for glucose plus O2, and then you get CO2 plus H2O plus energy. And remember to balance the equation as well, so write down 6 in front of oxygen, carbon dioxide, and water. Now we have anaerobic respiration in humans, which is C6H12O6, and then straight away you draw an arrow, C3H6O3 for lactic acid and some energy. And don't forget to balance the equations, so write down 2 in front of lactic acid. Next you have the chemical equation for anaerobic respiration in yeast, which is C6H12O6. Ethanol plus carbon dioxide plus some energy. So don't forget to write down the 2 in front of all of these guys right here. So finally, we are done with all the learning objective and all the steps to success. Thank you so much for today, everybody, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for all the lovely and kind messages that you guys gave me during Teacher's Day. I just wanted to say that I am who I am right now, and the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing is because of you guys and how kind and thoughtful and hardworking you guys are, mainly because you have always been super supportive of me, and I just want to return all the love back to you. So please stay safe and stay healthy. Don't forget to eat 3 times a day and rest in between. All right, so have a good day, everybody, and I'll see you guys next time.